Creation's Journey to Life. Day 42. Fear. Be afraid. Be very afraid. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that when I sit, walk, sleep, work on earth, breathing, without participating in my mind, no fear exists. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that when I engage thought, it acts like God, and fear emerges as make-believe concepts and ideas I make myself believe till I am scared. Essentially, I create my fear and then am afraid of my own creation. Such a powerful being I am. Yet it all happens only in my head, alone, and when I can transfer my fear to another head, through talking or writing or examples or pictures, it remains in my head alone, my fear only. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that any fear projection through media, any media that generates fear without a solution, or fear to stimulate specific behavior in the group of humanity, is a criminal act, as it intends control of the many for the benefit of the few. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that psychology is not about the mental health of the human. It is about the mental hell of the human. As math is compelling, the more patients, the more money, the richer the psychologists become. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that journalists do not assist the human race with integrity. The journalist looks for fear to induce adrenaline, to which the human body is addicted, for the sole purpose of profit. These acts make journalism as a group one of the great crime mafias in committing atrocities against life. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that television is designed to take the best advantage of the fear patterns and the physical response the human body has to fear, to maximize control and profit, as the human psyche is not understood at all. Therefore, the invention of control to keep the human caged while feeding it sugar-like love, to keep it occupied and high till death. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that the human can be made to believe anything, as the image can be induced in the mind, copied by the human, to play as a life drama, to such an extent that the human will believe the event actually takes place, ending up talking about it as real, while in fact only happened in the mind, like in a dream, so real that the dreamer is convinced. Yet the real physical is not considered, and because the human is so fearfully gullible, the media, the my day, is used for control, to extend the education control of the family daily, to make sure the dream continues, producing profit for the few and containment for the many by their free choice. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that anxiety is the experience of being shit scared for your own fear, produced for yourself by yourself, for the reason of scaring yourself to make or not make a decision, so that you can have an excuse as reason why you did nothing in spite of the evidence that one should act. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that fear is now so automated as a system that no one can remember what started it and no one cares, because a good scare gives a physical response, a physical high. So as to get drugs for free, just by producing your own fear, is heaven on earth. I commit myself to show that breathing here, without using the mind, being physical, will show how fear is a mind job based on a physical addiction to the body response to fear. I commit myself to show that the power of the mind is the ability to create your own illusion, and that the consequence to earth and the physical flesh is not understood, but used for something as insidious as profit and control of behavior. I commit myself to show that media is the extension of control for profit that holds no benefit to life at all, but only feeds images of fear as a constant stream to control the buying pattern of the human race, to keep the few wealthy and the man in fear. I commit myself to show that individuality based on the image in the mind as personality is always defined by fear and never anything that can be trusted. I commit myself to show that the positive feeling in the mind is always the nice view of fear, reacting to the addiction to fear, and that the mental denial of fear allows a free flow of the physical addiction to fear that keeps the physical feeling of the high produced by the body in response to the fear, and is then labeled as love or light or meditation as feeling, which only exists as a chemical response interpreted by the mind in ways to make sure the chemical addiction is satisfied. I commit myself to show that psychologists are addicted to the same bodily responses that create feelings of well-being, that are responses not understood and analyzed in isolation from the body, cause to never really heal anyone, as psychology is the response to a society that seeks ways to deny the reality of the self-created fears that have dominated all known history. I commit myself to show that media and journalism only feed on words that produce fear, as these words are consumed by the consumer to feed their addiction of the physical body to the body responses that are the way the world as life has been accepted, junkies at life, seeking the next high, regardless to the consequence to life. I commit myself to show that the body is always in agony due to the mind feeding on it in various response patterns, forcing the body to produce chemicals in many ways to keep the experience of the mind bubble to not see reality, producing, just like with the use of drugs, a dreamlike state, while calling the dream of the mind real and calling the physical that is real a dream. I commit myself to show that all the mind-induced dream states that create excitement are used by unscrupulous people that have no intent to produce a world that is best for all life. They are only interested in profit to produce a life for themselves in self-interest that will ensure their illusion to be the best trip ever. I commit myself to show that all fear in all ways is always self-produced in the mind and self-believed as real, as that ensures that the body will produce the chemical substances of addiction the person has been exposed to since childhood, as the patterns the parent induced to get absolute control over the child so that the child will be occupied to not interfere in the addictive occupation of the adult. I commit myself to show that the human race is yet to wake up and that all mind jobs of self-realization are just ways used to find a better chemical producer by the flesh on which to continue the high of the addiction called personality and individuality. It is like the robbing of the physical flesh of its resources, as constant raping of life, just to have feeling, like being on drugs. I commit myself to show that these addictions to substances in all the human has ever been, and that at the moment, few will have the resolve to break the addictions. Fortunately, death ends this. But what is visited upon the children, generation after generation, is atrocities of magnitudes yet to be realized.